authoring APprenons. Hi, I'm Brittany Griffin. Welcome to my Capstone video. I completed this project while studying for my master's in instructional technology at Kennesaw State University. I began this journey in 2010, but a few professional adventures popped up and delayed my graduation until 2016. Back then, I was a high school French teacher in the metro Atlanta, Georgia area. I loved using technology in my daily instructional practice, and I knew I could better harness it to connect my students to the French-speaking world. Little did I know that I would stumble upon many opportunities to impact far more than just my students with technology during my years at KSU. But that's the end of this story. Let's back up and start at the beginning. Remember back when I was a tech-obsessed French teacher? I was so dissatisfied with the textbook options for my students, specifically my mixed-level advanced classes. I regularly vented to my digital Twitter PLC of foreign language teachers, and we collectively sighed during textbook adoption season. There seemed to be no good options. Instead, we tweeted our way to a homespun curriculum, a mashup of amazing articles, videos, and songs from teachers around the world. I regularly intertwined these resources with my state standards and built really exciting lesson and unit plans. My students were engaged, my test scores were through the roof, but I was exhausted. I was moonlighting as a curriculum developer for 4 levels of French after teaching all day. This was not for the weak of heart. One spring morning in 2011, I awoke to an intriguing email from a publisher offering me a book deal. He didn't intend for me, a relatively new teacher from Atlanta, to write a book, right? Surely not. But in fact, he did. He'd followed the conversation and idea sharing on Twitter and proposed a merging of 3 minds to produce a textbook to support the newly reformatted 2012 AP French exam. I had one Skype conversation with my soon-to-be co-authors, and the deal was as good as sealed. We knew we could produce a revolutionary product that would move AP French beyond just test prep and into an interconnected, global place of constructivist, personalized learning. Within only a few days of brainstorming and visioning workshops, we quickly came to a consensus on a name for the project. #APprenons. This is a double entendre in French. APprenons literally translates to let's learn. However, prenons AP translates to let's take AP. We felt this linguistic play on words paired well with a Twitter hashtag as a symbolic representation of the overarching goals of the text. And speaking of goals, what were they? What need were we addressing? I see I've gotten ahead of myself yet again, so let's go back to square one. Why were we so excited to write this book? The first component of the vision, scaffolding, sought to address the reality that AP French market is niche. To maximize potential market share, we widened the potential user base to include multi-level classrooms with only a subset of AP students. This mixed-level composition is often observed in districts nationwide, and textbooks are traditionally not geared towards such diverse populations. APprenons would offer one input to all subgroups, but the expectations for output would vary based on skill level. AP communicative strategies would be introduced to our novice high students, while our pre-advanced students would complete the full AP task. While output was customized, each student would ultimately meet the actual standards for their proficiency level. The second component, differentiation, was a universal priority amongst the team and can certainly be observed in our scaffolding solution to the multi-level classroom problem. Providing a variety of task types to engage and challenge learners of all learning styles was of utmost importance. We even included personality and learning style quizzes and activities in our intro chapter. We wanted to empower students to learn about how they learn so they could choose the best product or process for themselves. The third component, arguably the most important, was technology integration to connect learners with Francophone language and culture. We intended to produce a digital textbook with robust, authentic content that harnessed Web 2.0 tools to enable student production in the target language, while also offering an option of a printed textbook that paired with the digital resources. According to Alsop et al.'s research, classroom technology integration for high-level learning is believed to lead to increased student learning. This textbook was intended to encourage constructivist instructional practices through vigorous technology integration. Foreign language teachers face a unique challenge because, thanks to the digital revolution, There's no shortage of authentic material that can be integrated into the classroom. But managing that integration and staying abreast of news and pop culture in the French world is time-consuming and difficult. We hope to solve this problem and also change how authentic resources are deployed to students. Rather than offering a video, text, or audio input and asking students to complete comprehension activities, we wanted to use authentic resources as a model with which students engage and mimic to scaffold their language production. Becker and Ravitz's research suggests that non-core subject high school teachers are the most willing recipients of such constructivist change to their pedagogical approach, so we hope that AP French teachers would be a good market. We set out a 6-step recipe to ensure fame and immense success in the teeny tiny AP French market. Sure, we thought, publishing a book sounds daunting, but we'll just break it down into small to-dos and chip away slowly but surely. That's why project plans work, right? What could possibly go wrong? Step 1. Negotiate the contract? Check. I'd never signed such a contract, so we banded together and sought legal counsel to ensure we weren't getting ourselves into any trouble. Fortunately, it all checked out, and we quickly put ink on paper. Step 2. Get our book outlined and a sample chapter authored. That one took some elbow grease, but we eventually got there. So, whew. Step 2 of 6 done, which means we're almost halfway there, right? This brings us to August 2011. Oh boy, step 3, feedback. This was the reality check that we needed, but we didn't necessarily want. The Chapter 1 field test was incredibly successful, but a common theme emerged from teachers, districts, and even our publisher. We had too much technology integration. It was intimidating and would likely be a blocker to APprenons adoption. The publisher was also admitted by the upfront cost to build out such sophisticated digital curriculum. All of this was crushing feedback. As a passionate classroom technologist, I had the if I build it, they will come vision. I just knew Luddite AP French teachers would be convinced of the power of technology once they saw APprenons in action. The reality, however, is that teachers were confused by the hashtag in our logo. So not only was the digital format on the chopping block, but so was our nifty title. It was a tough pill to swallow. The straw that nearly broke the camel's back? Copyright permissions. We may have made major concessions about the role of technology, but we stood steadfast in our commitment to only include authentic text, audio, and video in the project. The messy behind-the-scenes work to secure permission to use said authentic resources, however, was taxing to say the least. We invested hours scouring the internet, TV, and radio for resources that fit with the chapter themes, and then sent hundreds of requests for permission to reproduce the works for commercial profit. Each chapter required no less than 15 resources, and each required written permission and often reimbursement for use. These negotiations took on average 60 business days each. Negotiating for such rights was a new skill I had to quickly acquire, and in French no less. The work was slow going, and time was slipping away. Very early on, we determined 2 work streams in our project plan, permission and content authoring. So we tackled step 4 and 5 concurrently. During the fall and winter of 2011, we spun up chapters 0, 1, 2, and 3, including a complete rewrite of chapter 1 per our pilot feedback. We used placeholders for the authentic inputs that we hope to eventually include, and we charged ahead with the composition. We partnered with Victory Productions for the graphic design work, and conventions for fonts, color families, and page layouts were determined. The first few chapters began to take shape. In November 2011, I jet-setted to Denver, Colorado to present our vision and our freshly printed sample chapter at the National ACTFL Convention. That's the annual meeting of the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. Thousands of world language teachers descended on Denver, and my name was on the program. I am proud to have presented again at ACTFL in Philadelphia in 2012 and again in Orlando in 2013. We didn't initially include the conference presentations in our project plan, but they turned out to be an important step in building awareness for APprenons. But once again, I've gotten ahead of myself. Let's go back to step 5, writing the book. We rang in the new year to 2012 and kept composing and requesting permission to use authentic content. We felt like we'd hit our stride, but in April, a heartbreaking turn of events transpired. The APprenons author team had to void its contract with Wayside Publishing due to inadequate permissions for resources necessary to publish the book. The project was considered a failure. Fortunately, though, in July, the publisher breathed new life into the project by recruiting a new co-author, Dr. Elizabeth Zwanziger. I agreed to continue the project, the only of the original authors to do so, and Dr. Zwanziger hired a graduate assistant as a dedicated permissions procurer. This ultimately turned around the fate of the APprenons project. With permissions coming in quickly, summer 2012 was a flurry of review and composition. In August, chapters 2, 3, and 4 were rewritten and submitted for proofreading and graphic design. By September, the publisher hired a full-time employee to assist in the creation of the APprenons learning site, and we spent countless hours building digital learning activities to support the text. On the site, learners could access all of the text, audio, and video content, and they could also extend their learning with additional grammar, culture, and communication activities. APprenons was designed to support an upper-level course, but we felt that grammar, drill, and practice activities were still vital for the development of key communication skills. The learning site would facilitate student practice with immediate feedback and could be done anytime, anywhere at the discretion of the learner. Fall and winter of 2012 brought revisions and more permissions. We submitted the final chapters to the graphic design team in January 2013. Then began the tedious work on the index and acknowledgement sections. Finally, in March 2013, the book hit the press, and I held a copy in my hands on April 14, 2013. It was a momentous occasion. At this point, we're finally to step 6 in the project plan, evaluate. I had one evaluation metric in mind when I started this capstone project. Get ink printed on paper, i.e. publish. I knew in my heart of hearts that I would someday need to measure the impact of the curriculum, but goal 1 was to get it into use in classrooms. We quickly found that teachers were unwilling or unable to share their test scores, so instead we simply asked for teacher feedback on the impact of the text on their students' performance. What we receive is anecdotal at best, so we found the best evaluation mechanism to be a sales analysis. As I mentioned before, AP scores were hard to ascertain, and while teacher feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, it doesn't paint a complete story. The best concrete instrument for evaluating APprenons' impact is sales and percentage of market share. The College Board makes available the number of students who took the AP French exam each year, thus providing us an annual market size. We don't know how many schools were in the market to purchase textbooks for any given year, so instead we assumed that every test taker was in the market to buy APprenons. At the outset, our project team hoped to target about 5% of the market share. It is remarkable that a tiny publishing house has chipped away at 8% of the AP French market in 2015, given that large, well-established publishers such as Pearson and HMH have historically dominated the field. A dip in the market share was observed in 2014, as many schools opted to wait for the release of the second edition of our book. My capstone experience was a wild ride from start to finish. I learned so much about myself both professionally and personally. 3 takeaways stand out for me. First, I can't emphasize how important iteration is during the design process. I learned about this in my first semester at Kennesaw when we studied the ADDIE methodology, but I really saw it come to life during my capstone. Constantly reflecting on the end user, gathering feedback and performance data, and then tweaking the product. This lesson applies to so much more than just instructional design. It's a methodology for life. Next, change is coming and there's nothing you can do to stop it. As they say, change is the only constant. Accepting this and learning to embrace it, whether it be in the form of redefining the role of technology in my capstone, or accepting that my co-authors didn't want to continue on the project, being at peace with change was a big learning stretch for me. My final takeaway, finishing feels fantastic. Despite iterating and changing, despite the struggle, despite the almost failing. Actually, in retrospect, perhaps it wasn't in spite of all of those things. Perhaps finishing feels so fantastic because of all of those things. Regardless, closing the proverbial book on this capstone project and having a literal book with my name on it feels pretty great. During my capstone experience, I was offered an opportunity to leave the classroom and pursue a career in ed tech. I never thought I'd leave teaching, but by accepting this offer, I could impact teaching and learning at schools nationwide. I became a partner to districts, schools, teachers, students, and even parents to help with technology integration. My capstone helped me prepare for this professional leap of faith. I had a far better understanding of how tech integration takes place. Remember, slowly and incrementally? I saw that in practice every day in my corporate role supporting the K-12 EdTech market. So where does APprenons go from here? Since its initial publication in 2013, we've since published the second edition. And thus far, sales are strong, and demand indicates there's a long shelf life for this curriculum. We're knee-deep in Texas adoption work, and we continue to find ways to iterate and improve the delivery of what we consider to be the best AP French curriculum out there. I'm so grateful to Wayside Publishing for seeing something in me that I didn't yet see in myself, to my co-authors, both past and present, and finally to KSU for requiring a capstone of me. I will cherish this capstone project as a scrapbook of sorts, my journey to becoming a published author.